Hi. So in this video, we're going to look at object constructors in JavaScript. JavaScript provides a few ways to create objects. One of these is called object constructor notation. We can start by simply creating an object. We create a variable to store the object, and then use the new keyword and the object constructor to create this. Let's do this in our text editor. So we declare a variable called house, which will initially be uninitialized. Then we use the new keyword and the object constructor to create the object. If we add a console log for house, we can inspect the object. We'll save the code and run it. We get an empty object returned. Currently our house doesn't do much. We can add some properties to the object. To add a property to the object, you can use dot or bracket notation, but you use the object's name followed by the property you want to add. Let's add some properties in our code using dot notation. We'll add properties for the house name, rooms, and built date. So we'll say house dot name equals the string willows. Then we'll say house dot rooms equals 5. And lastly, we'll say house dot built equals 1998. Now let's save this and inspect our object again. The house object now has the properties added, but this is not very dynamic. We may want to add a method to return some value. In our example, we'll use a method to return the name of the house. To add a method to an object, we'll use dot notation again. We then use the function keyword, followed by curly braces. Inside the curly braces, we place the code for the method. Let's give this a go. So we use the name of our object, which is house, followed by a dot, followed by what we want our method to be called, which is getName. Now we use the function keyword, and inside the function, we'll return the name property of our object. Let's save this and run the code. Now when we inspect our house object again, we can see the getName method has been added as a property to the object. Let's try using the method. We get the name value of our house returned to us. We can update the properties on our object using either dot notation or bracket notation. So let's try changing the house name to the string manner, and we'll use dot notation. So we'll say house dot name, and we'll set this equal to manner. Let's save this and run the code. We can see the value of the name property has been updated. We can delete a property using the delete keyword, followed by the name of the property we wish to delete. Let's try this. We use the delete keyword, followed by house dot name. Let's save this and run the code. There is now no name property in our object. Let's use bracket notation to add the property back as the string willows. This could also be done with dot notation. So we use the name of the object with square brackets, inside of which we pass in a string with the property key we want to add. So we pass in name. We set this equal to the string willows. Let's save this and run the code. We now have the name property back in our house object. The above approach works great, but there will be times where you probably want to use an object multiple times. Perhaps you want to represent multiple users, or in our case, we may want to create multiple houses which use similar properties. Using the constructor notation, we can use one object to act as a template or a blueprint for other objects. So let's create a house function to do this. We'll delete all our code and create a function declaration. We'll call this house. We'll use a capital letter for the house function, so we can distinguish that the function uses constructor notation. It has no impact when the code runs, but it is a naming convention used in JavaScript. Inside the parentheses, we'll add the parameters name, rooms, and built. Inside the function body, we'll use the this keyword so that each property and method belongs to the individual instance of the object which is created with the function. We'll say this dot name equals name. This dot rooms equals rooms, and this dot built equals built. We'll also add our method, so we'll say this dot getName equals function, and inside the function we'll return this dot name. So now we're ready to use our function and create an instance of the object. We'll do this using the new keyword followed by a call to the function which creates the object, in our case house. We pass the properties for the house parameters as arguments to the function. Let's look at an example. We'll create a variable called manor house. Initially, this will be uninitialized, but we then create the instance of the house object by using the new keyword. We pass in the string manor for the name parameter, the value 5 for the rooms parameter, and 1998 for the built parameter. Let's console log the manor house instance. Our object has been created with the values we passed in when we created the object. Let's try to create a second instance of the object. We'll create another variable called Willow House. This time we'll pass in the string willow for the name, 4 for the rooms, and 2000 for the built year. Let's save this and run the code. We now have two objects, Manor House and Willow House. Both the objects represent houses, but the values of the name, rooms, and built properties are individual to the specific objects created. We can confirm this when we use the getName method on each of our objects. So in our code we'll say Willow House dot getName, and we need to use parentheses because we want to call the method. And then we'll say Manor House dot getName. We'll save this and run the code. We get Willow returned for the Willow House object and Manor returned for the Manor House object. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe for more content.